It was like if we were all famous and interesting and we recorded a podcast.
Sound like a mixture of Fergie and Jesus right now.
A little bit.
Coming from my lap. You can blast your abs and be stoned out of your gourd at the same time. This is not a big deal.
All those trips to the mailbox got to take up a lot of time.
I got to get all my McConaughey in.
Just from the power of staring into his dreamy eyes for long enough.
Well, it smelled like eucalyptus.
I hate hanging out with koala bears. Those guys are pricks.
Just read it in the journal. There was like a journal that I posted. It was like koala's brains are so small.
Koala bear journals?
Yes.
Yeah, Koala Quarterly.
Do we eat koalas?
I mean, if there was a Rise of the Planet of the Koala situation going on, I feel like I'll take us on that one.
Mm-hmm.
Word.
Yeah.
I was actually created by Pixar.
You don't look like a lamp.
What's the worst thing you put in your mouth on your honeymoon?
Welcome to episode 11 of the DBLBACK Podcast. Hello, listeners. I'm your host, Brent, one of the editors of DBLBACK.com, DBLBACK. Come visit us, check out some of our articles. Welcome to the podcast, where me and truly a robust contingent of gentlemen are here to discuss some of the things that we feel are relevant, things that we are taking the time to double back on, rediscover, helping our friends rediscover, and hopefully helping you do a little bit of digging on as well. The podcast here, what we do when we double back is try to find things that may have been worth your time that you missed along the way, do a little bit of analysizing, and then draw some conclusions. So, like I mentioned, quite a robust contingent of guys here on the podcast. Want to offer it up to let them do a little introductions of themselves. Take it away, Dave.
Good evening, Brent. Glad to be here.
Welcome to you, Editor-in-Chief, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for bowing. I really appreciate it when you do that when I'm in the room, you know.
Yes. Hey, Keith.
Hey, Brent. How you doing, buddy? First time caller, long time listener.
Ding. Burns. Ryan is here as well.
Hi, Brent. Smiley face.
Hi. Did you like how I introduced you, Burns, Ryan, as if I'm some database somewhere?
Yeah, make sure you get my middle name in there, too. It's none of your fucking business.
I know we have Topher with us this evening.
Hey, Brent, how are you?
I'm Dandy, Spanx. And welcoming back to the podcast for the first time in a while because the humans he keeps alive are either asleep or leaving him alone. Welcome to Adam.
Hello. I'm in a basement.
Just a basement. You got to find a basement to podcast, in my opinion. So glad you found one that'll work tonight. Well, cool. I know from episode 10 we had a little bit of homework. I'm hopeful that everybody has done a little bit of digging on the topics we brought up. We talked about a number of things last podcast. Some of it I'm sure we'll get roped into this as well. You can always check out the podcast right there on the website. We're also on iTunes and Stitcher. Please make sure you rate us as well as add any comments and let us know what you think. Topics I think we want to maybe dive into right away was brought up by our lovely Dave. Why don't you introduce us where we're going?
Yeah, Brent. Last week I talked about things that are popular that you just don't get. And I'm not talking about complaining about Twilight or complaining about this shitty show that your kid watches. I'm talking about stuff that is for you, for your demographic. You're interested in other stuff in this genre. It's either popular or critics love it, and you just don't understand why. So the first thing that popped up in my head, and this thing is a thing, I'm a genre guy. I read comic books still, and I'm an adult.
I like the caveat that you
questionable.
I love fantasy. I love all that stuff. Here's my first one. Guys, I don't get Lord of the Rings. Like, I really don't. I mean, it came out, and I know Brent's perking up here because Brent has a tattoo of Frodo Baggins on his back. But
you can't see it. It's covered in hair.
A tramp stamp. Hobbit stamp.
But
Hobbit stamp.
That's the first one that came to mind for me because it was huge for everybody else. And I feel like if you edited those 3 movies into one movie, I would really love it. But I can't get behind the 6-hour trilogy or the 6-hour versions of those movies that Peter Jackson released, those special editions. And I really can't get behind the Hobbit movies. The Hobbit movies have so jumped the shark for me. I haven't even watched past the first hour of the first one. I just can't do it.
Get 'em.
So this is my first one.
Dave, I think it's totally okay that you don't like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, because for the rest of us, it marks you as someone who's illiterate, and you'll be first against the wall when the revolution comes. Totally fine.
I gotta say, for my experience with Lord of the Rings, so it came out when I was in college, and we had like an old CRT tube TV, and we, big time stoners, all of us in our little apartment, we actually went out and had one of our roommates go out and put on credit, pay like $1,300 for like a 32-inch HD, the first HD TV like out there back in like 2001.
We're dating
just
ourselves.
so we could watch Lord of the Rings, in high def and just get like absolute stoned as shit and watch it all the time on our $1,200 32-inch TV that weighed 180 pounds. And that has a very special, place. I wasn't like a huge, fantasy guy with like reading the books and all that, but just at the time it came out, I was just like, I loved it for that. So that's my whole thing with it. So I understand why you don't like it. I'm not like a crazy fan about it, but, it has a special place with me, being a stone college guy that buys a terrible TV. So
that's dedication, bro.
No, and to clarify, I don't think it's that I dislike it. It's just I don't get the love, like the absolute outpouring of love for it. Like, I think they're good movies, and I think that in terms of like technical achievement, they're insane. But I just don't get it, the extent to which people love it, is all.
Let me jump in here as someone you highlight. You already called me out here, Dave. So I feel like I have to defend myself. But I think I get it. And I'm actually going to explain to you why I get it. As someone that owns all of the extended editions of The Lord of the Rings and tries to make time around every holiday season to watch all of them, I think I can speak intelligently about why I like Lord of the Rings, and I have actually spent some headspace as to why other people shouldn't like Lord of the Rings, or why I shouldn't like Lord of the Rings. So what I've come to find over time, especially watching them over and over again, is that they're fantastic movies to have on and to nap to. I love napping to Lord of the Rings.
Ooh.
I don't get a lot of chances to nap as it is, and when I watch it, it's typically the holiday season, so they're fantastic to have on just in the background and snooze a bit. Had I not seen Fellowship of the Ring when it came out in the theaters, I would have never read the books, and to Toph's point, understand why Lord of the Rings is a thing. Because I do feel, to truly grasp the magnitude of it and love Lord of the Rings, reading the books is just kind of a necessary component. When it comes to any movie after the first of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, I think they've progressively gotten stupider, because Peter Jackson feels a need to trump the visual effects and the action sequences of the last Middle-earth film he's put out. For instance, the most recent Hobbit movie, the second one, The Desolation of Smaug, he has this whole elaborate molten gold sequence, spoiler alert, in the kingdom of the dwarves that's not in the book and is just so ludicrous from a physics standpoint and from any sort of understanding of society. No one leaves enough gold in their kingdom at any one point to erect an entire statue.
Hold on. Have you ever seen Scrooge McDuck?
Yeah, case in point, Scrooge McDuck.
Yeah, I think you just got told. Sorry.
Yeah. Scrooge McDuck aside.
Also Apple.
It's overseas, though.
Damn it.
This is true.
All overseas.
Damn it, my theories. But that sequence, the ridiculous physics that are involved sometimes with like Legolas mounting horses backward in the first three movies, it's just like every time there's an action sequence, it has sliding down a fucking huge elephant's trunk.
All right, hold on. Well, stop. We're going to fucking nitpick the physics, but we're fine with ignoring the fact that there are goddamn dwarves and elves. That wasn't a low-hanging fruit that you were going to start shitting on.
And that's the tricky part, right? We suspend belief because, there are elves and dwarves and dragons. Yep, of course. But then you see Legolas, sliding down an elephant. Fellowship of the Ring was as close to, I think, the theme that Tolkien wrote in the books, and it did hook a lot of people. whether they had read the books or not read the books. And then every movie since has jumped the shark a little bit more because it's had to outdo itself and be more Hollywood. And that's made me like the movies a little bit less. And I don't know if maybe you picked up on that or perceived it more than I did before I ever started watching the bullshit.
That actually makes total sense to me, the way that you explained it. And part of that, I felt like if I let you talk long enough, you would talk your way onto my side. But that really made sense.
I kind of have come to your side, in all seriousness. Like, I'm going to watch all of the Hobbit movies and pay for the extended editions, but I'm kind of going to be grumpy about it every time I do.
There you go.
Or just fall
Next time I see
asleep.
you, I'm taking off that fucking tattoo.
Betrayer.
So I got a good one here as far as, so I'm an IT guy. I'm in my early 30s, and every one of my coworkers in the IT department, they all love The Big Bang Theory. And they always tell me about it all the time. Oh, you gotta watch it. So finally, Steph and I decided to hit up, get it on Netflix, disc. But as you all know, disc in the mail. We waited in the mail for fucking Big Bang Theory on Blu-ray in the mailbox, like some kind of asshole. Like, season 1 of Big Bang Theory Blu-ray, like in the mailbox, like it's Christmas. So we got it, put it in, and we're watching it, and we're just looking at each other like, and there's plenty to, I can see why it's popular. Some of the characters, well developed, but just the overall cheeseball sitcom laugh track, like lame jokes, I just can't get past it. I'm just like, I find myself getting like just annoyed as hell with how like you can just so predictable and things like that. And not to say there's not some funny parts, like Howard, he's great, he's a great character. Sheldon, of course, a classic character, but just some of the things they do, they talk about the story, and it just annoys the crap out of me, even though I should like it because, I'm a quote unquote IT nerd and all this stuff. And, so that's it. I'm a demographic and I just don't get it.
I can't agree more. The Big Bang Theory is totally lost on me, and I feel like it's something most of my peers enjoy. But I actually feel that way in general about all CBS programming, predominantly the comedies. Like,
absolutely.
If CBS is introducing a new show and it has all of my favorite actors, I still won't watch it because they greenlight shit that I just hate.
Yeah, more than just that, though, with The Big Bang Theory, I think I'm going to at least speak for Dave and myself here and say that we are humongous nerds, like of the highest order as I push my glasses back up my face. The show is supposed to be targeted to people who like Star Wars and comic books and whatever other tropes they pull out of the closet. But the fact of the matter is they're not doing fan service. We're still the butt of the jokes. They've just couched it in a reality where we follow people around who like this kind of stuff. The fact of the matter is they're still making fun of us. It's not a show for us. They're still the punchline.
Yeah, and I think it's less, like, I'm not offended by the show in any way, but it's definitely like the CBS version of the Nerd Show, whereas like 2.5 Men was the CBS version of the Bachelor comedy show. And while I liked How I Met Your Mother was the CBS version of Friends. And it's all just the CBS version of the thing that you are supposed to like. So I totally get that. I'm down on that. Although one thing I will tell you, Adam, is you might not have to look forward to it so much because it is syndicated on like every channel that shows half-hour sitcoms. So like,
we have to go in order.
Oh, that is true.
We're like literally 6 seasons. I've watched every episode for like the first 6 seasons. We will still sit and watch it because I will admit, as much as I'm ragging on it, there are still enough redeeming moments in it that I will still chuckle, but I just don't understand the widespread
You're a masochist, bro.
adoration that I get.
You're
Especially
a masochist.
Being in IT too, all my coworkers are just like obsessed with it, and I'm just like, yeah, okay.
I'll give Adam one little piece of props there, because no good nerd worth his salt who's going to start a project would stop all of a sudden watching them in order and go out of order.
Quit mid-run.
Yeah, gotta go in order.
No completist can do that.
Well, and that's my point from the last example here. Like, when you fall for something, you just see it through. And at least that's how I do it. And Toph and I have had this discussion offline. Like, when we find something we like, we dive. And, like, even if it turns bad, we stay committed to it and just ride it out. And then sometimes we resent the fact that we stuck it out as long as we did. But that CBS programming in general, to me, I'm sorry, it's garbage. And I think one thing...
DBLBACK Podcast brought to you by CBS.
One thing here that comes to mind speaks to why this. Yeah, thanks to our new sponsor. What does CBS even stand for?
It's the Columbia Broadcasting System, Brent.
Yes,
that is right.
That is
Oh,
true.
thank you. Thank you for fact finding. We
No problem.
really appreciate that. What I think this speaks to, and it's happened to me, and Adam, you just kind of explained it. It's things that like your peers try to advocate for you and get you hooked on because they think you'll like it, but then you try it out and it doesn't work. And this happened to me all the time in college. I went to college at Purdue in the middle of fucking nowhere, Indiana, and it was in the early 2000s when pop country became a thing. Pop country is like the bane of my existence. If we're talking old school Western country, no big deal. We're talking bluegrass, no big deal. But pop country makes me want to hurt pretty things.
Yeah, I'm with you
And-
there. I hate it.
How about rap
Can't-
country? That's the latest phenomenon in
Rap.
rap country.
That does not sound appealing to me either. But
Terrible.
But I would constantly have debates, drunken debates with my friends, and they're like, no, but you should like this music because they talk about the things we do and the things we like, and it's funny, and they tell stories. And I'm like, no, that's not what I want from my music.
Brent,
Plus,
those
it
people were
sounds
not
like
your
garbage.
friends. Those people
I know.
are not
I've
your
since
friends.
disowned them.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be talking about things you like to like it. Like, for instance, when I was in high school and college, and still even now, I really, really loved the 3 6 Mafia because of their storytelling, but it was about the most outlandish shit. Like, I was not running a train on girls and you know, drinking scissor, but like that was
Don't be so
not
modest.
that was not my thing. And like, yet, like, I loved hearing, you know, all about it, but it was just like, you know, it's not my life. It's not like if someone's sitting there rapping about like going out and puking into your backpack and then waking up at 8 o'clock to take an exam that you forgot you had. It's like, I still wouldn't like it. I'd be like, what the fuck is this? Like, this guy's stupid. This
Adam,
It's not what I want from my music.
Adam, 3 6 Mafia didn't have any songs about being a bouncer for a call center?
They did. They had one. It was on the B-side of Mystic Styles. Mystic Styles.
Tear the club up, thugs.
Amazon. That's hey, see, there you go. You know, tear the
Oh,
club
yeah.
thugs. There we go. I will round of applause. Oh my God, we had some great nights with Tear the Club Thugs. Listen to Hit 'Em Up with our shirts off, swinging them around our head.
That's Petey Pablo, man. That's Petey Pablo.
Good stuff. The Tear the Club Thugs.
Yes.
Ever since I can remember, I've been popping my collar. So
Well, there you go.
Popping his collar. He's popping,
What just happened?
popping his
That's
collar.
What's happened? Yeah, don't bring pop. That's later 3-6. Don't bring that into the Tear the Club Thugs.
Don't come in here with that shit.
You're diluting
that weak shit.
Yeah.
So
And,
so I have two more. I have two more that I thought about that are rather. I'll use the word controversial, but I think they're just very. Like, I'm attacking a whole subculture with either of them. So unless somebody else has one.
Are you the audience for these things? Are you
What?
are you considered the general
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
let it ride.
So one, I love the Coen brothers films in general. I think most people do, right? A bunch of people typically have one favorite between the Coen brothers' full filmography. And that is?
Well, everybody loves The Big Lebowski.
Exactly.
I think that's what you're referencing.
The Big Lebowski I have watched multiple times. I recognize that a lot of movies, when they have that sort of following, it takes multiple iterations of viewing and all that, right? I can appreciate the character that is the dude. I can appreciate like the crazy series of events. But you kind of get used to that watching Coen brothers films, right? But The Big Lebowski
Don't do it.
is
Don't do it.
something I do not understand as a phenomenon. Why the fuck do people love that movie so goddamn much?
Brent, I agree with you 100%. I want to get that in before the hate comes. Oh.
Yes!
Oh shit! You
Yes!
found someone.
Now tell me I'm a pretentious asshole for not liking the pretentious movie The Big Lebowski.
I think I'm more on your side, and I would
Really?
say, I would say not because I dislike the movie. I really think there's something there. There's some theme that I don't get every time I watch it. Like, I really feel like I'm just not smart enough to get it the same way everyone else gets it. And if you ask anyone who talks to me, I consider myself to be pretty smart. I'm kind of a condescending, arrogant douche. But
You're in good company. I am too.
There's a part of me that every time I watch it, I'm just like, you know what? I just can't put in the effort to really appreciate this movie correctly. So I don't know. Let's let Topher scold us for not being smart.
This is like of Mice and Men. When he goes back to being dumb at the end, I'm just going to let you guys live in ignorance and bliss. I'm not going to take that away from you.
No, you have to tell us why we're wrong. I've seriously gone through that same series of questioning my own intelligence and perception of theme. Like, I don't get why that movie has such an impactful presence on our culture. Tell me I'm missing something.
It's about
obtusely
America,
obvious.
bowling, and it's quotable.
And I think that's the fun in this, Toph. You have to tell us why we're wrong.
I don't know that I can explain why you're wrong, because I think on one hand it's fine if you don't like that movie. The reason I really liked it at the time is you have to think about, this movie came out in the midst of films like Zoolander, which I came to eventually appreciate simply because it's so fucking stupid and bad that it's enjoyable in small doses. I can watch that film once every maybe 15 years. Big Lebowski is infinitely smarter and easier to watch than anything else that had come out that was couched in that same, this is absolutely just 100% a comedy.
I thought John Goodman was classic.
Like Zoolander, it's pretty simple to see why people appreciate it the first time around.
See, I hear you, but that doesn't really even add up to me because I consider them two different genres. Like, Coen Brothers comedies are very different from the frat pack comedy movies if we're trying to compartmentalize them. You know what I mean? Because the Coen Brothers movies are very identified. Like, I just listened to the Cracked podcast that Dave's referenced a couple times about, like, the auteur theory and stuff like that. And they really dig into the Coen Brothers films and just how over time, they've gotten worse and worse about trying to teach the lessons about morals and who's right and who's wrong and how that affects the chain of events and things like that. But I like all their other films that I've ever seen. Like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was easily one of my favorite films. And again, it's the same style of comedy that Coen Brothers is, but it's very different from, Zoolander or Anchorman or those things. So I can't even appreciate that comparison. No offense.
I'm super mad. Guys, I'm so mad right now. I think that the very bottom line is that it just, for me at the very least, and I certainly won't speak for anything else, but when we're looking at the difference between something like, I don't know, I think it came out in 98, which means that's around the time of stuff like There's Something About Mary, which is a perfect example of shit that people love that movie, and I don't fucking get it. And I think Half-Baked came out either that year or the year later. And again, a film that doesn't hold up to more than one watching for me. Whereas The Big Lebowski is infinitely watchable, ultimately quotable. I mean, funny and on some level a lot deeper than a lot of the other comedies that came out in the same time period. So honestly, for me, the biggest thing about it is it holds to a time and place where all of the movies had suddenly, or at least for me, felt very stupid. And that was one that didn't. So if nothing else, I don't know how I'd feel about it if it came out today, honestly. That's, a long time ago now.
Right.
And I think also the one thing about The Big Lebowski being the kind of cult movie that it is that it came out in a time where everybody could go online and talk about it. Whereas, like, if that movie had come out in, like, 1982, it might have come and gone and nobody would have ever talked about it. But because it is a little bit smarter than probably I am and a lot smarter than a lot of the other comedies that came out around the same time, I think it lived on the internet so that people could be like, what the fuck did I just watch?
I think that's definitely a big part of it, is that it caught kind of that rising tide of universal access, at least in this country, to the internet, where you could find other people who wanted to discuss nihilism in depth and, exactly how the rug brought the room together.
Yeah.
So, okay, maybe I've been proven wrong. I guess Adam and Keith hasn't chimed in here, but Dave and Burns kind of agreed with me. So is it really that people don't like The Big Lebowski, but they're unwilling to admit it because they're concerned about backlash?
Personal safety. It's a personal safety issue.
Where are we at with this?
I think I'm afraid that Joel and or Ethan Coen will personally come to my house and beat the shit out of me.
Fuck you up.
Yeah, for expressing views about their movie.
But I've never honestly made it through The Big Lebowski. I just, I don't get it enough to even want to try, and I'll just concede that.
At this point, you're just past it. It's like 16 years old. You're like, nope, never going to do it.
Fuck, that was 16 years ago.
God damn you. Why would you say something like that, Dave?
I still stand by the John Goodman. John Goodman was classic in that role.
John Goodman is amazing in everything.
Yeah, I can't
Agreed.
name one thing John Goodman's bad in.
Yeah, but he just, man, with the aviators on, and he had the gun, and he was just so ready to just, he's a
Boss.
liar, man.
Donnie!
I don't know. I have nothing negative to say about the movie. You can
All of my willpower to not start quoting The Big Lebowski right now.
Yeah,
I'm not going to. I'm gonna hold back, but
I'm really applauding your effort right now.
I did it for you.
Proud of you.
Brent, what is your? Did you have another one? Do you have another hot take you were gonna bring in here?
and maybe this is way too simple to explain to be a full talking point, but as somebody that really enjoys beer and wants to explore new beers and really wants to appreciate all that beer has to offer, I don't like hoppy beers. And everyone,
You're
thank
such
you.
a pussy.
Yeah, and everyone in my peer group, I mean, Adam's brought over awesome pale ales that he wants me to try, and he has like a grin on his face when I drink them, and then I go, not so much, and it kills little parts of his soul, and I hate it. I don't want to
speak
do
for
that
him.
to him.
Don't speak for him. What kind of
I
beer do you
will.
like,
I'm
Sally?
in charge of his feelings.
Look, Sally,
And-
what kind of beer do you like?
I love wheat ales. I love brown. In general, I love ales.
You're such
And
an American.
I prefer brown ales and wheat ales, but I cannot, for the life of me, enjoy a pale ale.
Do you like ceviche?
That's a strange jump, but
Not
it's
at all.
okay.
It has to do with the palate. It's not.
You're talking about pairing beers with food?
Or
I'm just talking about-
the
no.
acidic nature of ceviche.
No, I'm actually just trying to ascertain what kind of palate you have. It seems like you don't really have one.
Brent.
Seems like they have a
That's
topic.
slanderous.
You're getting real aggro on the man's palate.
Because he doesn't have one. It's just fact. I'm sorry if you get offended.
Hey, Brent, so you said
Yo.
you like wheat. What about the hybrid wheat IPAs, for example, Lagunitas Little Something Something and Boulevard 80 Acre? Have you tried either of those?
I have not, sir.
Well, some.
Maybe those are good gateway.
They are. If you like wheat, those are half and half wheat, half IPAs.
Okay.
So they're not full IPAs. They're classified as hoppy wheat beers, essentially.
Okay.
Can
In
I defend Brent for a minute and then condemn him at the end so we can all feel good again?
Yeah.
I'll feel
So,
good even if you just defend him and leave it at that.
Fair.
Yeah.
No. So, as a insufferable beer snob and, in fact, a home brewer, one of the first things you learn is that hops cover up all crimes. Like, there's shit you throw in at the end and will murder virtually all other flavors. It's hardest to develop actual flavor when you're actually brewing beer. If you're just pouring some shit out of 2 cans, boiling it, and slapping it in a bottle, then it's not hard to develop shit. But if you're actually doing an all-grain brew, it's much harder to develop any flavor that isn't hops. And for some reason in America, it's gotten super popular to have these incredible. I mean, you're looking at Hop Slam was really the first one that came out. That was just like, we're going to shove hops so far up your ass, you're going to be, spitting it out next week. That's not really developing any interesting flavors. That's complex. That said, I love a really good IPA, and Brent is stupid.
Here's my defense.
So you're actually telling me that the hoppiest beers are probably the shittiest beers that they've just experimented with, failed, and then stuck a bunch of
Not
hops in it to
necessarily.
cover up all their failures.
Not necessarily.
No, that's all I'm taking from this conversation.
Some of the hoppy beers like Hop Slam, they have enough like that. It's brewed with honey, and you can taste the difference between something like a Hop Slam or like a Greenbush Brother Benjamin, like really high ABV beers that they're hoppy, but they've got a lot of base to it. And then there's other stuff that's just hoppy to be hoppy, but don't worry, be happy. So
You said it's so
that's
Wisconsin.
That's the other upsetting point is they always have really cool names, and so I just want to be holding that beer.
like penis laser.
What?
Let me jump in and defend Brent here.
You guys don't have to defend me.
I don't.
It makes me feel like these are terrible topics.
Brent, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. I don't get it. And let me tell you why. It's not that I dislike hoppy beers. I like them just fine. I like them just as fine as I like other drinks, cocktails, whatever. However, I don't understand the need to pay way more money for it, especially when you're out at a restaurant, or if you go out to like a World of Beers or you go out to a beer market, a place just to drink beer, then I get it. But like when you're sitting at your house recording a podcast on a Tuesday night, like why not just drink a Coors Light or drink 10 Coors Lights, in my opinion. Like that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying.
Topher's holding up a PBR for the.
I'm holding up a glass that had Bell's Two Hearted in it, and it's delicious.
Right, that's better.
It's the best.
And
that's
Burns
why
is holding up his Budweiser.
It's
Diesel.
the money. The money, man.
Dave, some of that is simply supply and demand. We have gone so fucking hop crazy that we're actually having shortages of commercially grown hops in this country now. Because with the advent of all the microbreweries which have popped up, which are all wonderful, I'm a big fan of local beer, and the increase in home brewers, which I am as guilty of as everyone else, that we're actually short on hops now. So the reality of the situation is that if you're drinking a very hoppy beer that's brewed with, good U.S. hops, you're going to pay more for it because they're becoming more and more scarce.
I don't want any beer with those shitty Mexican hops. Get that shit
The
out of
reality
here.
of this is that most of you live in Indiana or Illinois, and we should all buy a farm and grow hops.
Word is
Yeah.
bond.
And then we can drink whatever beer we want because we'll be rich.
So I gotta tell you about the hop thing. So it's a palate wrecker, and it's always been talked about that. It's like once you start, like when I started really drinking beer, getting into craft beer, I did not like hoppy beer at all. I liked brown ales, I liked porters, I liked stouts. I wanted nothing to do with hoppy ales. They gave me headaches. I was so bitter, dry mouth. It was just odd. I didn't like it. So the more I got to drinking them, I was like, hey, I kind of like these. And as I drank more and more of them, I found when I went to less hoppy beers, my taste buds were just so destroyed by the hop bitterness that I like when I'm tasting something else, I'm like, this tastes like Milwaukee's Best to me. Like I couldn't even taste anything because my taste buds were so wrecked by hops. And that's why a lot of IPAs are called palate wreckers, because they just, if you get used to it and that's what you're used to drinking, I mean, it really kind of ruins you for everything else. That is, unless it's something totally incredible like a Bourbon County stout.
Yeah, but there's palate wreckers and there's palate cleansers too, my friend. So I mean, at the end of the day, I don't see your argument.
I drink IPAs pretty much exclusively. That's all I drink. And about the cost thing that was mentioned before, it's a killer. Like I have not paid less than $9 a six-pack in a very, very long time. But that's what I enjoy. And I'll routinely go to Benny's and drop like $40 to $60 every 2 weeks just to stock up my beer fridge with good stuff. And then, I have friends over and they're always like, oh, you have the best, stuff. And I always buy like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I like trying a whole bunch of different stuff. And when I try stuff that's less hoppy, I just never like it. But, if someone else likes it, there's clearly lots of options at Benny's. People like it. I think with beer, it sucks that if you don't like the hoppy ales, because I can't like drink with you, like bring over a six-pack and we'll drink it. But at the same time, I really don't care. You can like whatever you want.
You guys like
I'll
Duvel?
drink these 6 beers.
Sure enough, I just went to my fridge to refill,
What is that, a Cleveland Cavalier wheat beer?
to reload, and actually pulled out Boulevard wheat that my buddy had left behind over the weekend. So I'll get on board.
Well, cool. Those were the two that I thought I'd get absolutely murdered on, but shockingly, there were some shared opinions on those. I'm glad. Anybody else think of something they're supposed to like, just don't get?
Yeah.
Taking that as a no, I'll just throw it out there to the listeners. Let us know maybe things that you guys have not been able to get on board with, but all your friends and all your constituents are. And we'll see if we can agree or disagree and why. So also on episode 10, we talked about a great web series that's available for $0 called Comedians in Cars Drinking Coffee. Keith brought this up. If you'd like to maybe give a bird's eye view of what this web series is, and then we'll kind of get into it.
Yeah, I think it's in its 3rd or 4th season. I first heard about it on Mike and Mike in the morning, and it was when the Super Bowl was going on. They had Jerry Seinfeld on when they were in New York live. So I just, kicked the tires, and the episode with Alec Baldwin is the one that really is my favorite. It's just more or less, he gets cool old cars, drives around with a comedian. They go to a local cafe, just chop it up a little bit, and they just are themselves. And it's fucking hilarious. Alec Baldwin is the man.
Actually, in watching the Alec Baldwin episode, I realized how much you end up sounding and acting like Alec Baldwin when you're like in your moments of
Dave, shut your cock holster.
And I know you love him, so I think that's kind of a cool thing. I mean, there are times you're not very Alec Baldwin-like, not to burst your bubble, but there are times that you embody an Alec Baldwin bravado that I must say kudos to.
Thank you.
I checked out the most recent episode, which is Jon Stewart, and I also watched the one with Aziz Ansari. And the thing that I really liked about the series is, well, first of all, it's Jerry Seinfeld being Jerry Seinfeld, essentially making the show that he would make if someone said, "Here's some money, go make a thing." Like that's I think it honestly is what Jerry Seinfeld would always want to do if you just said, "Here, go, do this." And the second thing I got was, if you know a guy or you talk to a guy or you're friends with a person who likes the show Top Gear, the car portions of the show are really kind of reminiscent of that, because Jerry Seinfeld will make jokes about the cars, or you can tell how passionate he is about cars and comedy. It's not just, we can throw a webcam or a GoPro in a car and get good footage. The car is really a part of the show, which I had no idea going in. I honestly thought it was just going to be two guys cracking jokes on a GoPro.
Well, I like it because they source the cars from, people, just, real people, give up their car for Jerry to drive around in during the show, which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah, and they're super varied, too. They're super varied. The episode with Jon Stewart, he drove a Gremlin in the first half because Jon Stewart's first car was a Gremlin. And in the episode with Aziz Ansari, he drove Aziz Ansari's massive tour bus.
Tour bus.
Yeah, so Jerry Seinfeld is just behind the wheel of a tour bus talking to Aziz Ansari about tips on how to drive a tour bus. He just has...
because he's done it before.
He just has insane car life knowledge that you never got when he was Jerry Seinfeld on Seinfeld.
Living in an apartment in New York and probably not owning a car, or his character probably didn't own a car.
Yeah, so it was just a little bit. I mean, he owned a Saab 9.3. Let's be real.
The character did? Shit.
Yeah. There are a couple episodes where he has a Saab 9.3.
Busted.
And he buys his dad a Cadillac. And in real life, Jerry Seinfeld has 100 Porsches.
Many. Yeah. He's as big a gearhead as Jay Leno is. Maybe not as big, but he's that status.
Yeah, but pretty big.
Yeah.
I have to admit, when I got this homework, I wasn't excited because there's a deep personal confession coming. I don't find Jerry Seinfeld funny.
That's fine.
Oh shit!
Yeah, I get
find
that.
It dad-like?
I don't find it. It doesn't appeal to me. But
did the show appeal to you?
That's what I was about to say. Is that literally the only ththings I know Seinfeld from are Seinfeld, which doesn't also appeal to me.
And he talks about that in this series in one of the episodes. But go ahead.
So, but just what you guys were saying, it's Jerry Seinfeld being Jerry Seinfeld as opposed to Seinfeld, which is somehow different in my head. But, so I went back and watched the episode with Carl Reiner and Mel Brooks,
awesome.
Who are two of the funniest human beings to ever walk the earth. And I really kind of expected to be a Jerry Seinfeld yuckfest / hand job. And it turns out that he actually does an incredible job of getting both of those guys to open up and talk in an interesting manner and talk about stuff that is actually super fascinating to hear.
Yeah.
And I watched the Louis C.K. episode, which, honestly, I would watch Louis C.K. talk to a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So I don't really give a fuck who the co-host is there. I'm good with that. It's brilliant. It's very, very good. I will say in that
they
during
take
my
his
homework, I also
boat
found
out, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. It's so good. So I have to say, I was completely won over by it. I thought I was very impressed, and I actually queued up a couple other episodes to watch later. I did, however, find out in a bit of a digression that obviously this format has been ripped off a bunch of times now in the X in cars getting coffee or doing Y. Including Deadmau5 does it, where he takes Ferrari out and picks up other EDM DJs and artists and drives recklessly through cities in the search of coffee. And while the conversations are much less funny and interesting, the chances of him rolling over a Ferrari in downtown Seattle are much greater. So it actually adds a little danger to the show. So I really suggest you double back on that.
Deadmau5 looks sick all the time. So that's
constantly he's trying to kick heroin all the time.
Yeah.
He looks like an extra from The Wire.
Are you sure his name's not Bubbles?
He's always looking over his shoulder and mumbling about Omar, and he's crying a lot.
And he's got fake money.
I was watching the Jon Stewart episode today. The whole thing is like sponsored and presented by Acura. They pay for the whole thing to be produced, and I think that's a good thing because he makes reference to it. So, like, it's a car show, but he doesn't drive around in an Acura in every episode. It's a car show, but it's not like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., where every car happens to be an Acura for some reason. It's just a part of it, and he makes reference to it. Like, in the Jon Stewart episode, they're walking through a crosswalk, and an Acura, like, stops on a dime in front of them, and Jon Stewart goes, "Oh, it's that," and Jerry Seinfeld goes, "Oh, it's just a product placement. They're pretty pushy this time." Like, that's really funny.
Yeah, there's always some in-joke about the product placement. Or maybe it developed over time, because I don't think it was that blatant at the beginning of the series, but it's kind of become the in-joke.
I like how they play up local spots, though, too. I mean, that's pretty cool. They, like, get local spots on the map. So I think that's really
like
awesome.
Individual, like, diners and stuff you're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, and, like, there's a grocer, the Alec Baldwin episode they were at. There's like a grocer up in New England or whatever that's really popular, and it's just a good way to get word of mouth out.
I was gonna say, I think it's cool that they have the sponsor that pays for the whole thing to allow him to do exactly what he wants to do with it. So he doesn't have to think about what format is this going to be in. Does it have to be a 21-minute TV show with 2 spots for commercials? Does it have to be? It doesn't have to be anything because he can run it and make it exactly what he is. So
yes.
One observation I'll make is, and I feel like I've actually talked about this. Maybe I just talked about it last podcast, but I hate Jay Leno. I've hated Jay Leno probably all my life. I just didn't realize it. And then especially when he bumped Conan from late night, and I watched the Jay Leno episode because I felt it was the most relevant he was going to be for this series because he's a gearhead as well. And I found him remarkably likable and entertaining in the episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Jerry Seinfeld. And part of it was...
I'm right there with you. It's amazing. I had the same feelings about Leno that you did in terms of his late night persona. And the couple things, I wish I could, I have no idea what the show was, but I've actually seen a couple different profiles of his immense and impressive car collection where he actually comes off as affable and normal.
Yeah.
Very much, as down to earth as someone who has a whole fucking car warehouse can be. But it was like, oh, I would like to hear this guy talk every day as opposed to whoever the fuck hosts that late night show.
Yep. Yeah. And I don't know if it's because Jay Leno hosting The Tonight Show was kind of in our generation's lifetime. Like, we didn't know Jay Leno before he was Jay Leno of The Tonight Show. Or, like, we kind of did because I remember Carson being on when I was really young. But, like, I was too young to really register any of that. And so Jay Leno, the comic and sometimes movie actor, isn't something that's on my radar. Jay Leno, the annoying, easily impersonated Tonight Show host that does headlines, is the only way that I can, like, mentally picture Jay Leno. So it was fascinating that I was as engaged in the conversation and genuinely enjoyed listening to he and Seinfeld in that moment, because they talked a lot about the early comedy scene and stuff like that. Like, that's probably the best thing about this series, is listening to comedians talk about comedy. And there's some of that happens in Louis on FX, Louis C.K.'s show as well, which is just fascinating to me because unless you dive into these people, you don't realize that comedians are some of the most screwed up people on the earth, just riddled with self-doubt and self-pity and, sleeping throughout the day and things like that. Just the amount of work that they end up putting into just getting a set list or just booking a gig and nailing that gig is kind of a fascinating exploration for me.
Yeah. I mean, I really feel like there are a couple of these episodes when, like, now that I'm looking back at I have the site pulled up of who's in each episode. There are a couple of these where you bring it up, like seeing Jay Leno outside of The Tonight Show, outside of his element. Who else do you want to see like that? Like, he has one with Howard Stern here. Like, I'd really like to see Howard Stern outside of the Howard Stern show. Like, I think that's a really good point, is that you get to see these people as people and not as people on a stage.
Because it's live and because they're taped, and because he's seemingly friends with all these people before they're on the show, there's this rapport that already exists, more so than a typical late night interview. And they really kind of dive into depths that you probably don't otherwise get to, except for in a personal conversation with your friend over coffee.
It was like if we were all famous and interesting, and we recorded a podcast about it.
That's exactly what it sounds
You mean like when we'll be famous and interesting?
Nope.
Oh wait, we're already interesting.
Nope.
Right, Doubleback listeners?
I don't know.
Oh.
Nope.
You can't. I don't know if we can give ourselves that one.
Nope.com.
And if you don't feel like we're interesting, that's exactly the type of feedback we welcome you to send our way on Twitter,
Hashtag
Facebook,
segue.
and in the comments here. Excellent.
Brent, you're a beautiful, beautiful man. And I love that segue. So I'm going to start us off on what I think you guys should double back on this week. July 23rd was Batman Day. If you didn't head to your local comic book shop or rewatch every Joel Schumacher Batman movie, I'm just kidding.
Every Joel Schumacher.
I'm just kidding. All
Batman
two of them.
Forever, meaning nipple suits.
Yes. No, so don't do that. But in that spirit, what I am going to say is we gave you some Batman homework a little while ago, but we gave you 5. It was too many to focus on. I'm going to give you 1. I know that Topher owns this one, and I live close enough in proximity to allow Brent and Keith to borrow this thing, so you don't have to pay for it. However, you should. Topher is mouthing no. Don't allow them to borrow your trade paperback. That's what Topher is. Okay. Anyway. I'm going to allow you to borrow it, but we're all going to read Batman Year One, and then we're going to talk about it. For you guys who maybe haven't read a comic book in a long, long time or have never been into it, I'm going to try and get you into it with probably, in my opinion, the best Batman story ever. It's the origin. It was redone in 1986. It gives you the gritty, real Batman that people talk about.
Loves.
It's a great entry point. It's a really, really great entry point.
I haven't read a comic book since I got pussy, so.
Hey, Keith, so you haven't read a comic book in about 15 years?
It was this. He was sitting in a comic book store, reading, turning the page, and then he was propositioned. And so he set it down, and he had the sex in the comic book store.
Is that capital T, capital S, the sex?
Would you get out of my head, Brent?
I think that's how we all lost our virginity, right? We put down comic books, and then
put down a comic book, and then had capital T, capital S, the sex.
And he never finished that issue of Casper.
I mean, so anyways, Batman Year One, Frank Miller, 1986. I'm going to lend it to you guys, but I really think you should go buy it. Like, if you buy one comic book, this should be the one. Go buy it. It'll cost you not so much money. Yeah, I'm serious, though. Go buy it. Yeah. If Watchmen's good. Watchmen's really, really good.
Batman's better. He's the goddamn Batman. Why are we having this conversation?
Goddamn Batman. Okay, all right, so who else has something for Doubling Back next week?
Quintessential movies that remind you of your childhood.
Quintessential movies that remind us of our childhood. I think that's a good topic for next week.
That's a great topic.
Golf claps. Golf claps all the way around.
Excellent. Mm-hmm. And so I will go kind of specific yet broad, if I may. I want to make sure you get me that issue of Year One last, Dave, so that I can hold it ransom, so that I can at some point have the DVDs that I loaned you months ago.
I still have to watch Frailty, and as we've been on a Matt McConaughey binge,
exactly.
Yeah, I knew where you were going.
That's my request for homework. And even if it's just find an awesome old Matthew McConaughey movie, I'm comfortable with that. I just recently wrote an article that linked to a video of McConaughey talking about his craft and the time that he put into the character of Wooderson, which is a very iconic character, I think, in pop culture of kids from the 90s, and specifically that movie, and really launched his career.
McConaughey is a man of multi-talents.
All right. So Brett, your pick is early McConaughey.
What I'm asking you to do is either check out Frailty, because you haven't, or find classic McConaughey that proves to me that he's always been a great actor, and I'm a selfish prick that is way too judgmental of him and his perfect abs.
Yeah, I'm just going to
go back and watch Dazed and Confused, watch Boys on the Side, watch A Time to Kill, watch Amistad.
How about Lincoln Lawyer, too? It's a newer one. I thought he did great in that.
Boom.
Toph, you got a pick for us for this week?
The news that Yahoo was picking up Community for their fabled 6th season. I went back
seasons in a movie
and watched a good chunk of season 5 while I was on endless airplanes this month. And I have to say, initially I wasn't a really big fan of Community. I thought it was fine, and I liked it well enough until I started flying and traveling all the time. And for some reason I had the complete series available to me, so I went back and watched a lot of them kind of in close succession. And season 5 really stands out as, if you don't like the show, which I can understand, season 5 is like pure, trip to the dentist for you, with wild speculative show after wild speculative show. But the fact that they did an 80s era G.I. Joe cartoon in season 5 is amazing. That starts off on the first 30 seconds doing what every young child who ever played with G.I. Joes did, and immediately killing the bad guy. Not just shooting wildly over his head, just shoot him square in the face. You know what? Now we're done. Boom. It's really hard to be the leader of Cobra when I just shot you with a laser rifle in the head. So I would say to go back and give some of that season 5 Community a whirl, because there's not only some good acting, but there's some really good writing within that season 5, especially if you're of the appropriate demographic and age bracket.
Is Community on Netflix, Hulu? Where can I find it?
I don't know. That's a good question. Life for the past 90 days has been the beginning of Fight Club, where I just fly and talk to imaginary friends.
Is this a test, sir?
Good homework, guys.
Hopefully we can attract again the contingent to come back.
I would say it was robust.
And
it
help
was robust
us.
as fuck.
It was quite robust.
The robustiest.
Not a word.
Hopefully we'll have the robustiest of contingents back. Guys that have done their homework and chat about this in great detail. But I think those are fantastic topics for us to do some double backing on. As always, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter. Hit us right up here in the comments. Anything we've referenced in, the editor-in-chief's done a great job of putting the comments right in there. So check that stuff out. Let us know what you've found through your analysis and double backing. And otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Finger guns.
Finger guns.
Pew, 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 pew.